Danny Gavin, welcome to Jewish Money Matters. How are you?
Doing well, thank God.
I am so excited to talk to you this morning. I mean, you're quite the Renaissance man. You're the man with many, many titles: rabbi, MBA, university professor, chief strategist and founder of Optidge. You have your digital course that we'll talk about today. Should I add cantor? Should I add musician? I mean, there's so much, Danny. I mean, this is so fun. So I'm excited for us to dive in. And I think a great place to start would be with the career path. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but it is an interesting thing to dive into. You know, how did you go from rabbinical college student to MBA? And then specifically focusing on the world of digital marketing. By the way, I already bragged about you in the introduction, so everybody kind of knows what you're up to, but really a world that is, for many of us now, you know, it's part of our day to day, but back when you started, this was really cutting edge. And again, like I said, how did you get into this? So connect the dots for us a little bit.
Sure. So I like to start off my story that I grew up in an immigrant family, right? So I was born in South Africa. We came here in the mid 80s, straight to Texas. And I think why that's important is because when you grow up in an immigrant family, like parents work hard. I'm not saying other people don't, but in particular, right? You come to a new country. So I think that set the groundwork for me, just the right environment of working hard, doing a lot of things. And I think that's really important. In addition to that, I think another key is that my parents actually launched their first website in 1999, which was relatively early. Around that time also, that was when like AOL Instant Messenger and GeoCities. I actually built my elementary school's first website back then using GeoCities.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So, it was like not exactly approved, but I did. It's like, hey, I built this website, check it out. So I kind of was involved with a lot of these things early on. Now, I would say moving to Rabbinical, so being in the environment and the community that I'm in, it's very common for us to go through, yeshiva and to go through a Rabbinical program and to get your ordination. So it was something that I always wanted to do. But naturally, when you go through the system, not everyone is going to do that for a living, right?
Yeah,
they might not actually be a rabbi. So, you look towards the people in your life and mentors and what they've done. So I would say there are a couple people in my community who, after they got their rabbinical ordination, they went ahead and got their master's degrees or got their MBAs. And I thought, ooh, that's really cool. That's something that I'd like to do as well. So that's exactly what I did. So after I got my ordination and we got married, I went back to Israel, studied for my GMAT, which was, my graduate test to get in.
Oh,
I know it's hectic. And especially like I took it in Tel Aviv, like on the 8th story of some random building. So like, I didn't even know where I was going. Craziness, right? That's not the best environment to be taking one of these tests, but it was an experience, to say the least. And so applied to two schools, to Rice and to University of Houston. I really wanted to get into Rice. I didn't. I was really dejected, but it was actually Hashgacha Pratis. It was divine providence that I got into University of Houston, and the rest is kind of history.
And you say that because now you're a professor there? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and I think that I've had so many wonderful opportunities there. In addition to being a professor, it's extreme diverse institution. And being in a yeshiva background, and I would say more, not a closed community, but it was my first time going out into the world where I was in a classroom with so many different people, so many different cultures. It really opened me up to, just kind of getting more into the business world. So it just was the right environment for me, really.
That's great. And at what point do you decide, well, I also want to teach? Not only do I want to run my own company, but I also want to teach.
You know what? To be honest, I originally wanted to get a master's in education. And I remember discussing this with my wife. This was even before we got married. She went like, okay, so what are you going to do?
Right.
I'm like, well, I really
women, we always ask that.
like, I really want to get a master's education and I'd love to be the principal of my elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I don't know if that's such a good idea, for the type of life that we want to live and everything. And, I took it to heart. I'm like, okay, right. You have a good point here. So I'm not upset about that decision, but I always had that fire inside of me. I want to teach somehow, get into education.
Amazing.
So it really was a blessing. While I was doing my MBA, they actually pitched to us, do a PhD in business. And that sounded really exciting, but it didn't make sense. So I guess in my mind, it was like, one day I want to be a professor. I thought maybe it'd happen like in 10 years,
right?
But I got an email 5 years later from the head of the marketing department saying, hey, Danny, we want to up the education here at the university when it comes to digital marketing. Instead of having these theoretical professors teaching, we want people who actually know what they're doing. Would you like to come in and be an adjunct? And I was like, yeah, like I was this was on my bucket list, and great. I'd love to do it.
That's awesome. Now, going back to that time you were working on your MBA, as I know that not that many students, go into an MBA program thinking I'm going to take the entrepreneurial route. At least that wasn't my experience. I mean, there were a handful of us, but I certainly didn't personally. Did you know all along, or were you going into this program thinking, well, I'll get a really nice job with a stable salary and benefits? Like what was your take?
Success to me meant getting a 6-figure salary at a large corporation.
Really? Wow. Like the 100%. American dream kind of thing.
American dream. Like that means like if I'm actually going to make it, it means I've gone through this program. I'm going to get a corporate job and prove to everyone that I can do it. Right. That's what success meant. And
I'm pretty sure your vision has changed by now.
I mean, it changed back then. Right. Right. I graduated. I didn't have any offers from that perspective. So yeah, it was like, ooh, but where did the success lie is that, I had an internship between year 1 and 2 at blinds.com, which eventually was bought up by Home Depot. And it was great because Daniel Kotler was a CMO at the time. He gave me the opportunity. And I would say that internship was in many ways life-changing. Why? Because number one, I got to be an amazing environment, learn all the different parts of digital marketing. And then I also became very close to the CEO.
Yeah.
Even being a little intern. But the cool thing about the CEO, Jay Steinfeld, was he liked to get to know everyone, even like the interns.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He's great at building culture, which is something that I know you've emulated yourself.
Yes. And then the key is that after, I was hoping to get a full-time job there, which didn't happen. But you know what? Once I left and then I graduated, he would send people my way. Hey, I know this young guy, Danny, he knows his stuff. You should really work. So we actually sent a lot of my first clients were from Jay. And that helped a lot.
Wow. And I guess we didn't mention it, but there must be also that entrepreneurial thing in your upbringing. Your parents, like you said, were very hardworking immigrants. They started their own company. They've had tremendous success, really building it on their own. It's something that you saw from early on, right?
Yeah, totally. So like I said, I never thought about being an entrepreneur. But when it kind of happened organically, right, it wasn't a scary thing because,
interesting,
that's why I grew up. It's like, I remember even talking about it as a kid. Like my dad, when you're an entrepreneur, you're not getting a paycheck. So you don't always know when the money's coming.
Right. But
I remember those discussions. So for me, it wasn't as scary as, let's say, maybe someone who grew up in a different environment.
Right. I like that you said that you remember those discussions, because I think that's so important, right? Like you don't realize, but you're growing up with that dinner table conversation where your parents are juggling, the home finances and the business finances, because it's all intertwined. If there's no money coming in, cash flow is tight in the business, and cash flow is going to be tight at home. So it is very different. And did you and your wife have these types of conversations also? Because, she also had to kind of get on board with the uncertainty, right? Of we're going to do this. And I know you worked on the the name of your company, which I want you to tell us about also, because I think it says a lot about what you're trying to achieve. But first, did you also find yourself having these delicate conversations about, we're about to deal with uncertainty?
You know, thinking back, there was never really concern from her.
Wow.
I think there was just a lot of trust but a lot of like openness. Like it wasn't like, sometimes like you create a business and keep it quiet and like the spouse has no idea what's going on. But I think there's a lot of transparency in what's happening. So it was never like a scare.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like also excitement, because I know you worked on this name Optidge together. What's behind the name?
Yeah. So when I talk about it, we literally were like sitting on the couch trying to come up with names in like 2010, 2011. So at that point it was, a big part of digital marketing is optimization. So I wanted to have something about optimization in the name. And then another,
should I ask you to tell us what that means for listeners? Probably.
Yeah, no, for sure. So optimizing means making something better and tweaking. And no matter what part of digital marketing you're in, whether it's SEO, which is optimizing websites so that they show up higher on the search engines, or an advertising campaign, let's say you're running 2 or 3 ads and you see that one ad is doing better, so you shut off the others, that's also considered optimization. So the point is that when you have, the nice thing about digital marketing is you have a lot of data points or a lot of levers to pull, and optimizing means pulling those things that are doing better and pushing more, and the things that aren't doing as well, doing less of. But yeah, getting back to the name. And then the other thing was was the concept of bridge, and the idea of bridging the gap between companies and the customers that they're looking for. And also the relationship between, let's say, me and those companies that I'm working for. So when you take the word optimization and bridge and put it together, that basically created Optidge.
I love that story. That's great. That's a great, and this is actually a great segue to my next question, which is on internet marketing itself. I know that you often stress, and you just mentioned with these both aspects, you stress the importance of content creation, especially as it pertains to your website, right? But then there's that pay to play, strategy, which has gotten much more expensive in the last few years. Are these still the 2 best ways to get leads for companies to market their services? And given the higher cost of advertising, what should small to medium-sized companies be focusing on?
So it's a really great question. So I think that in marketing and advertising, I think you're setting it up the right way. There's the organic side, and then there's the paid side. So those are going to be the 2 areas that one has to focus on. I know you like talking about investing a lot. So the example that I like to give is that organic strategies is like investing in real estate. It's very strong and powerful, but it takes time. No one's going to buy a plot of land and then flip it. I mean, there are some, but most people, right? 7 years, 10 years or longer. And I'm not saying that if you work on a marketing strategy, it's going to take 10 years, but you have to keep in mind that it may not happen right away. It's going to take time to build.
It's a longer play.
Exactly. While paid strategies, I like to compare to investing in the stock market. Now, even in the stock market, there's long-term plays, but it's a shorter investment. You can pull money out earlier, and there is risk, right? When you invest in paid, it's not always going to go your way, but most of the time, if you do it the right way, it is going to go the right way. So that's kind of so when you look at a small business, you really have to look at, what do you need right now? Is it something that you can wait long-term? Or is it like, oh, I really need sales right now, and I might need to work on a paid strategy, because, investing in something organic, if that's only going to happen in 3 to 4 months now, and I can't wait that long, I'll be out of business, then maybe you need to focus on paid. In a perfect world, you're going to be doing both, and focusing on both. But sometimes you have to make the decision. And once again, it's based on the need for the business, immediate or in the future.
And I really like that you explained it this way, because, with business decisions, sometimes we have people who ask these questions to me and they want to get it all perfect and all right away. And I'm like, I'm the example of like, you don't build it perfectly. Because if you wait till it's perfect, you're not going to get anything, right? You're talking to the person who, embarrassingly enough, I've been working on my website for 6 months. To my credit, I changed web developers halfway through. So it's coming, people, it's coming. But what I mean is, yeah, you have to focus on what's going to generate the revenue, if that's what you're after, sooner, not to discount that these other it's like, the foundation is super important, but if we get stuck trying to do it all, we might not do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah. And it's funny because I work with some big, companies where they literally, in order to get one piece of content out, it has to be approved by like 5 people.
Oh.
And even like the VP at the top, who he should have no business reviewing those things.
Right.
But you can see that, like, I'm just bringing that as an example where, like, imagine we want to produce 24 pieces of content this year, but because of the systems that they have,
right,
like, you barely can eke out one over 6 months.
Wow.
And it's painful. And we've actually had to fire that client because it's been tough. Like, when we're not able to do what we want to do,
right,
or able to do, or what you hired us to do,
right,
then it's just not going to work. But yeah, the idea is, it's like analysis paralysis.
Right.
With everything. If you're going to wait for it to be 100%, you're never going to get there.
You're never going to get there 100%. I mean, yeah, I fully believe that. And the flip side of that, by the way, I recently had a conversation with somebody regarding this website, and they were like, well, you don't need the blog. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I so need the blog. You know how much content I have? You know how fast we can get this website to be ranking high? Like, I do need that blog. It's one of the top things that I need. And they were like, no, you don't. And I'm like, you're not the right person. We're not the right fit. It's interesting. Now with that, so much has changed though, or maybe you told me, no, Yael, not many things have changed, but so maybe I should say I feel like, let's just say it like this. I do feel like so much has changed in this space. I think it moves really fast. Like we said, like, pay to play is not what it used to be 8 years ago, 7 years ago, even 5 years ago. Right. So, and so many other things. What are some of the exciting things happening now in the digital marketing space that you feel like maybe we're not thinking about, or maybe we're not even maximizing yet, but that you see as really important, really, saying we got to focus on this, people, this is important?
Yeah. What I'm about to bring up is not necessarily here right now, but I think it's coming, and we have to like think about. So, number one, the world of SEO, which is optimizing websites to show up higher on Google, because Google is the place that people go to when they're looking for things. But we have seen a shift where, maybe in a couple of years from now, where people won't even use Google, but they're using TikTok, right? I don't know. They're going to be searching for things. So imagine, like, I'm so busy, like, trying to rank my website on Google, but like, if the next generation, Google might be like the MySpace that it was for us. And now they're moving to TikTok. So even now there are reports coming out like, ooh, people are using TikTok more and Google less. Now, I don't believe that's the case right now, but it may happen before you know it. And therefore, where our base lies now might not be future. So that's something that you have to seriously think about. And like, I'm personally scared. I know, me too. I'm like, Danny,
are you about to tell me I have to open a TikTok account? Please don't.
Oh man, like, I personally am not a TikTok fan. So I like want to stay away from it, but I don't know. It might be, and if it's not TikTok, it might be something else. But right. I know it. But it's literally, those discussions are happening right now. And if for us to close our eyes is not a good idea, like, because it may happen. Right.
Right. Which brings us to the point that this is important for any business owner. I mean, we did say you don't need to get it perfect, but it's something that needs to be happening. You have to be working on your digital marketing strategy, right?
Totally. I mean, and that's why even TikTok, as much as, like, if personally you don't like it, you kind of have to get your foot wet, or dip your toe in the water, just to try and start, because if it does come more mainstream, you don't want to totally not be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Okay, let's talk. Hello, I just went on LinkedIn. Did you notice that I'm on LinkedIn after like 15 years? It was so bad, Danny. It was like, I don't think it was you who told me. Somebody said, your marketing is great, but your social media presence is great, but what's with your LinkedIn? I'm like, what's LinkedIn? Do people even use that? They're like, yes, we do. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. That's so embarrassing.
It's funny.
So I'm back.
I never even thought about that for you, which is kind of interesting.
And not only am I back, but I really enjoy it. And I've gotten really, really good leads from being there. So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Not on a client, not for clients so much, but really good leads for content for the podcast. It's a great authority builder for me. My clients are still more on Instagram, but hey, it's fun.
There's a whole world, especially in the Frum community, that have really been building their authority. And
I know.
brands.
I never knew.
Yes, and if you're not there, it's not good. But yeah, it's really important, and I'm glad that you've started to grow your presence.
Yeah, no, and I've gotten really, really good guests on the show from it, and a lot of interesting proposals. So I'm on LinkedIn, people. You can go follow me there, and Danny is too. By the way, you wrote something recently about Google changing your titles. I don't want to get too technical here, but what was that all about? Because it kind of went over my head.
Sure. So every single page on the internet has a title tag. And what that means is there's a tag on the back end, which when that page shows up on Google, that's going to be the main words that show up. Like, so we know there's like the bolded large text that represents the page. And then under that is like two smaller lines, which will be like the description. So for forever, you were able to, actually write what that title should be. And then that's what Google would show. Then Google decided that a lot of people don't write titles, or even if they do, maybe they're not so great. So instead of using the title that you wrote, sometimes we want to go ahead and write up our own title.
Oh, as a writer, that makes me really nervous.
It is nerve-wracking. So it came from a good place. Like for those, imagine you've got a website that has 10,000 products and you haven't written good titles. So Google will come along and update it. But that's where it came from. I think it came from a good spot. But practically, imagine if I've crafted this amazing title for my page and comes along Google and for some reason they don't like it and they switch it to something else. And you can see examples on the internet of like really bad rewrites that look horrible. That's really, really is not great. So I was just letting people know about this. And there are ways to kind of manipulate it so that you can get Google to push more the title that you wrote instead of them rewriting it. But sometimes it's out of your hands.
Yeah. And I would think even if you would still need people like you and your team to help you do that, wouldn't you?
Yes. You could technically go onto Google, see how your page looks and then compare it and then try to manipulate, but using like an agency or an expert could help you push you in the right direction of what you need to know in order for Google to more often choose what you actually have written versus them rewriting it.
Danny, I want to ask you, because the time seems to have shrunk when it comes to Danny Gavin's story, meaning it's moved very, very fast. There's a lot that's happened in a very short amount of time. You started your agency, you teach, you launch your digital course, ODEO Academy, which we'll talk about in a second. So you've gotten so many accolades, you built a team. So what do you make of this blessing of, it's fair to say that it's been a very short amount of time. So I'd like to explore that a little bit, especially you have a spiritual bent to you, obviously. So maybe there's something here that you can tell us, because I think it's important for us to appreciate those blessings.
Yeah. I look at it all as a blessing, as divine providence, as a shgacha pratis. Although like I would say a bulk of like what's happened, or like the big things have like started from, let's say 2015, 2017. But I think that it starts even from 2010 when I left school, and there have been like hard times and working hard. Sometimes I look back at, and say, why did I wait so long to like build this agency?
Wow.
Because I only started putting it into high gear in 2017. I'm like, ooh, I should have started earlier. I know other people who have been around for longer. But I think everything has a reason and a place. And I think the more that I get into it, it's a lot of it is divine providence and hashgacha pratis. And I'll give an example. So thank God my business is primarily based off of referrals, like 95 to 98%. So that means we're not actually going and building business, but because we do a good job, someone tells their friend or another company and they work with us. But what that means is that at least now, most of my business is really up to Hashem, right? It's like, I'm not doing anything. It's like, okay, people
By
are
the way,
coming
it's
to me.
like that, right? It's just a facade.
No, but
nice
but it's crazy, Yael, because it's like, like I give an example. Recently, things were really busy and crazy, thank God. But it was going a little too quickly. And my staff came to me and said, Danny, like it's rough here. We need some help.
Right.
So we slowed things down. We weren't onboarding as many clients. We hired more people in order to make a stronger foundation. So then, like, when you're ready to go, I'm like, okay, we've hired all these people, ready to go. Let's turn the spigot back on. And then suddenly it's like, okay, why is it not moving quick enough? So on one hand, someone can be very scared, like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? But on the other hand, like the way I look at it, and this, I really thought about this a lot, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but it's like, okay, Hashem decided that, Optidge and Danny Gavin is going to make a certain amount of money this year, right? And the fact that during these months, it's been a little bit slower. Like I was expecting to launch 4 clients, 5 a month, but it didn't happen. It's not necessarily because we did something wrong. It's just maybe this was what we were supposed to get this year, and that's how it goes. And when you think of it from that perspective, it definitely helps and kind of puts into thing, and you don't worry, because that's so. I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I always think about it that way, but recently I've been thinking about it more because it's like a lot of it's out of my control.
For sure.
And like you said, like Danny, like you see the blessing. It's like, yeah, like this has all been, thank God, one big blessing. And with that, it comes the peaks and the valleys, and that's just part of it.
Right.
So that's kind of how I've been looking at it.
Yeah. And having that perspective, which, like you said, it's not like all the time you have it, but when you try to hold on to that perspective and seeing the entire journey is just God blessing me. And so, I just put my effort. I hire the people, I train them, I do good work for my clients. That's about as much as I can control.
Yeah. And then the trick is obviously in the good times when it is bustling and booming, you remember that it's not just because of you, right?
Right.
That's extremely important as well.
Yes, and quite challenging. So tell us about ODEO Academy, because again, this was something that I heard about last year and I was fully supportive. I remember advertising and recommending the program to so many here in the audience. I was so excited about it. How did this idea come about? And tell us what it is.
Sure. So during COVID, so in 2020, the JCC of Greater Coney Island, which is in New York, they reached out to me and said, hey, we'd really like to put on some courses for people in the greater, tri-state area. We heard about you, Danny. Would you like to do it? I'm like, sure, that'd be great. And so I remember, like, this is April, May, right after COVID started, hunkering down in my bedroom and like doing these live webinars. So we had about, I think when we started, there were like 100 people. And then as the course went along, it weaned down, but it ended up being, I think, like a core of like 25. And it was really exciting. Now, although it was like a webinar, so I didn't get to see anyone, but people chatted and I could kind of get the personalities from the people chatting, but it was wonderful. So it was a great experience. I recorded all of those videos. A couple of months after that, I was like, ooh, online learning, especially during COVID, was popping up. I'm like, hey, like I've got all this content.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to find a way to monetize it and to help more people. And, at that point, I didn't know how I was going to do it or the angle, but I spoke to a couple people here and there, and came up with the idea that it makes sense to focus on a niche, right? On a specific area, specific, certain types of people, because if you just go too wide, you're not really going to go. So I doubled down on the frum, Jewish observant women community. And the reason for that is because I feel that for them, whether, they have a, more often than not, women in general are very busy, but especially in the frum world, whether, it's, Shabbos and kids and everything, sometimes, and there's often that responsibility of, when it comes to making money or providing a parnasa, they have to help out sometimes. So digital marketing is great because it's an amazing skill that one can have. There are a lot of virtual jobs. You could be your own freelancer. There's so many wonderful opportunities. So at that point, it's like, ooh, I think this is great. Not, it's really good content. And I think that this group can really use it. And that's what we started with. And and so we launched ODEO with two cohorts. One was specifically focusing on frum women, and one was more of a general cohort. And thank God we've seen a lot of success.
It's so cool because basically you're training them to have their own mini agency, right? They could serve clients from the comfort of their home.
Exactly. Not everyone goes that route. Some people are looking for a job, but there are a couple, or there are quite a few who have. And I still get questions from them. Or I've actually sent some clients that haven't been good for me,
right?
But I've connected them with some of my students as they're starting to grow their business. So the beautiful thing is like, what, Danny? So you're like breeding your competition? And the answer is no, because thank God there's a very big world out there.
Yeah.
And there's so much business. And
100%.
I think it's wonderful if I think it's a blessing. Like if one of my students actually, I compete against them in the future, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's no real competition, right? Because there's just one you, right? Now I do want to, before we wrap it up, I do want to ask you, because you mentioned you really started in 2017 and you were thinking, oh, I should have started this earlier. So were you just kind of doing this solo before 2017? Is that what was going on? You were kind of like fishing for clients on your own while you were doing other work. What was going on?
So number one, earlier on, I was just like a single man consultancy. So it was just me. Maybe I would get some other people to help here and there. In about 2012, I did get the opportunity. There was another company. And the way I found them is that my parents needed a new website to be being built. So I helped them with that project and found this agency here in Houston. And the owner of that agency, it was a web development agency. He was about 2 years older than me, and we hit it off really well. And he's like, wow, Danny, you really know digital marketing. Why don't you come and help build out the digital marketing department in my company? And I was like, ooh, that's cool. So it was a really great deal. He would bring in the business. I would create this department, manage the work. And it worked really well for 5 or 6 years. Near the end of 2016, his company was focusing more on Fortune 100 companies. My business was more, or guess my business unit was more about small to medium-sized businesses. In addition, the culture of his company is he started hiring more people. So he had like this whole company structure of people working. And then there's here this guy, Danny Gavin. He's not an employee. He's like, he's here sometimes, he's not. And it just didn't fit anymore. So sadly, he basically like invited me and said, Danny, like we're going to have to separate. At that point, it was very hurtful because it was like, this guy was not only, but it was like my friend, right? It was like someone I would work with for like the past 5 years. So it was hard, but like I said, it was a total blessing in disguise.
Right.
And thank God he allowed me to buy out some of the contracts that I was working with. One of my employees there actually came with me and came at the beginning of 2017. And it was just me and this other employee. And okay, we're going to do this. And that's kind of how the rebirth of that's how Optidge, the rebirth started.
Wow. Good for you. Good for you. Well, Danny, I like to wrap up every interview with what I called Jewish Money Matters Fill in the Blanks. And so this is the part of the show where I'll give you an open-ended sentence and you'll finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right. When I give Meiser or tzedakah, I like to give to
organizations where it's clear what I'm giving for.
Yeah, where you know where the funds are going, what it's been
Exactly.
used for. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that aspect that we can actually get to know these organizations. It's not just, giving them a check, but we can be involved also in, what's happening. I'd love to make more money because.
Ooh, that's a hard one, Yael.
Tell me you would like to make more money.
I would like to make more money. It's a hard one. I would say in order to make the lives of my family more comfortable and less worries.
Right. Which I think the less worry part you got down, and knowing your wife, I think she's fully on board with that, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I think you've mastered that pretty well. Something I wish I'd learned about money growing up. And I'm sure you learned many good lessons. We didn't get into that. We touched upon a little bit of the business, kind of like what you absorbed, but was there anything that now looking back, you're like, oh, I wish I'd learned that?
I did have a small investment account as I think one of my gifts for my bar mitzvah was, I think it was like stocks or bonds. But yeah, I think if I would have if I would have invested a little bit earlier, I think that would have been better.
Oh, I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to give it to my children. When they ask me like, but what's that money for? Can we just have it now? No. You don't want it now. You don't need it now. Trust me. You're going to be very happy that I'm doing this for you.
One other thing that I've done with my kids, not all of them, is I've actually created like mini investment accounts, like on Charles Schwab. Not a lot of money, but giving them options to like invest in the companies that they want and see how it goes. So that's also like, if I could have had that, that'd been great. Right. So now I'm saying kind of filling that gap of now. Yeah. No, it's a great education because now it becomes familiar to them. It's not like as daunting and scary and mysterious. Awesome. Money, spiritual or physical? Spiritual. Something I splurge on unapologetically is musical equipment. Ah, yes. Do you have a special room in your house for this stuff? So you have a music room? It's gonna be too hard to show you, but I've got like a wall of guitars. And yeah, I love guitars. Wow. I'm getting the feeling that in your family, talents were very much cultivated, because you did say that you started playing with technology early on. It sounds like nobody stopped you, even though, it kind of like you were probably in your world, probably not many people were building their elementary school's website or playing, you know what I'm saying? It seems like your parents were, and the same thing I'm seeing with the music, right? It seems like your parents were the type to see that this child has a talent for something. Let's not put the brakes on it. Yeah. You know what? I like to give a lot of credit to like my father's parents, because my grandfather was a professional jazz musician in South Africa, and my grandmother was a professional artist in South Africa. So I'm not saying those are like the main things, but I feel like that kind of, it's like trickled down. And it was even me like cultivating my talents. I had a very close relationship with my grandparents. And to me, my grandmother was always like, Danny, you have to be unique. You have to make sure you are who you are. And I love that. I think that pushed me a lot to kind of find who I was and do those things that make me different or special. Oh, love that. Danny, spender or saver? Saver. Really? Good. It probably helps in the business. So, and that actually comes a lot from my wife. I feel like her upbringing, I don't know, it's just that rubbed off more on me, and we've definitely very, very into saving. Yeah. My husband is too. That's so interesting. I am a saver now because I trained myself, but I don't think that I'm naturally a saver. I just
push myself in that direction. So at this point, I probably am. But yeah, I wasn't naturally like that. Totally. Not totally. Today I'm most grateful for.
My wife and my wonderful family, especially my little daughter.
She's so cute.
Yeah.
We should mention she's one princess among what, 4 boys? Yes.
Yeah. So we had 4 boys and then we had our little girl. So
beautiful. Yeah. Finally, I'm Danny Gavin, and I believe Jewish money matters because.
Say that one more time.
Finally, I'm Danny Gavin, and I believe Jewish money matters because
money is something that comes from Hashem. And as much as when we're in the day-to-day and we're working so hard, and a lot of it appears to all be, in our hands and everything that we do, but there is something higher and greater. Yeah. And it's important to try to see that as much as possible.
Yes. So well said. Beautiful. Danny, where can we find out more about ODEO? I understand it's going to be opening its doors pretty soon. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. So our next 2 cohorts are going to be starting November 6th. And you can find out more about that at odeoacademy.com.
Yes. And as I said before, I highly recommend the program, the course. I know a lot of ladies in the audience have taken, and I've heard so many good things. Congratulations again on that and on Optidge's success. I'll be calling on you guys as soon as my website is ready. You guys are always the go-to when it comes to this. And thank you so much, Danny. Thank you for this conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here today.